Waking up above the saloon. You awaken not to an alarm, nor to sunlight gently rousing you, but to a smell. It's a peculiar smell, layered, persistent, and uniquely Western. It isn't foul in the conventional sense, though it turns your stomach a little. It's simply there, as if woven into the wood of the walls and floorboards, as much a part of the building as the iron nails that hold it together. The mingling scents of old whiskey, smoke from the cast iron stove, and cheap perfume assault your senses before your eyes are even open. There's also sweat, someone's sweat, not necessarily yours, and something distinctly barnyard-like drifting in from the open window. You open your eyes slowly. The light is pale, strained, and uncommitted. It casts long shadows through the sheer curtain fluttering lazily in the desert breeze. You hear a wheel creak somewhere outside, perhaps a wagon turning down the main street, and then the call of someone in Spanish, answered by a grunt and a laugh in English. The mattress beneath you, filled with horsehair and long past its prime, groans when you shift. One of the springs jabs your lower back. You wince but don't cry out. You've grown used to pain in small doses. The blanket tangled around your legs is rough wool, the faded red of something that used to be bright. You think it was once fashionable, imported, even. Now it's a frayed sheet of necessity, more scratch than warmth. You're awake now. Truly. You turn your head to the left and see the same thing you see every morning. A battered wooden dresser missing one knob, a chipped porcelain wash basin with a water pitcher beside it, and a small mirror so mottled with age that it only reflects fragments of your face, enough to remind you that you're still here, still Catherine, still the madam. You let out a breath. Another day. You sit up, muscles protesting as they stretch and unkink. Your neck cracks faintly, and a dull throb pulses at your temple. Too much smoke last night, or perhaps not enough water, or perhaps just the weight of too many decisions pressed down behind your eyes. Your boots sit by the bed, neatly placed but scuffed and splitting along the seams. You slide your feet in without socks. The floor is cold. Outside the window, the town begins to rouse. You can hear the piano downstairs. Someone's trying to tune it again, plinking one key over and over, sharp, flat, then sharp again. There's a low hum of voices rising from the street, men barking commands to their horses, the clatter of metal as a blacksmith begins work, and the unmistakable sound of someone hawking tobacco in a rough, unfiltered cough. The saloon is quiet, for now. Soon, the girls will begin to stir. They'll slip from their rooms in various states of modesty and exhaustion, pad barefoot into the washroom to splash water on their faces, comb their hair with slow, practiced fingers. Some will grumble. Some will joke. Some will already be calculating which regulars are likely to return tonight, and how generous they'll be. You've seen it 100 times. You've seen it through every season and in every mood. You pull on your bodice, the lace is worn but reliable, and tie your hair back with a ribbon that's more sentimental than stylish. There's a knock on the door. Miss Catherine? It's Thomas, your assistant, your bartender, your doorman, and on occasion, your trusted lookout. You want your coffee? You don't answer right away. You walk to the door and open it just a crack. Thomas is there, holding a tin mug in both hands. Steam curls upward like a ghost. "Thank you," you say, taking it. "You sleep?" he asks. You glance down at the dark liquid. "Enough." He nods and leaves. You take your coffee to the window, staring down at the main street. Carson Street, they call it, though it changes names from town to town. You've been to 7 towns like this one. Does it? Pretending to be respectable with names like Commerce Avenue or Heritage Row, but in truth, The only thing that's ever heritage out here is violence, liquor, and gold. From above, you can see the town coming to life. Across the street, someone's putting up a new sign on a general store that burned 2 months ago. Down the alley, a dog roots through discarded food. A miner stumbles by with dried blood on his knuckles and dried vomit on his vest. He probably won't remember how he got either. You sip the coffee. Bitter. There's no sugar. There rarely is. You think about last night. You think about Sarah laughing too loudly at the bar, Lucy giving that old shopkeeper her usual wide-eyed flirt, and Emily, sweet, timid Emily, who had only just arrived a week ago, still startled by loud sounds, still too quiet to trust yet. You think about the man who tried to follow her upstairs without permission. You think about how Thomas had to step in, how his hand rested on the grip of the revolver, just lightly. Enough to make the point, not enough to escalate. You take another sip. This place doesn't run itself. Everyone thinks it does. They think you sit on a throne of velvet and whiskey, counting money while girls do the dirty work. But you know better. Downstairs, you hear the soft clink of glass. Someone is organizing the bar. Probably Lucy. She's always up early, pretending she's not. It's a habit of the old orphanages. Pretend you didn't need sleep, pretend you didn't need food, pretend you were invisible. It never leaves you, not really. You pour a little of the coffee into the basin and splash your face. The cold bites at your skin. You look into the mirror again, see a half reflection of yourself. You catch a glimpse of your eyes, tired but still there. This building is yours, but the deed is not in your name. You had to convince a banker in Cheyenne to sign it over to a shell company, a fictional man named Everett Shaw. It's a joke now between you and Thomas. Mr. Shaw wants new curtains, you'll say, and Thomas will nod, deadpan. Of course, Mr. Shaw insists on quality. You touch the scar above your left eyebrow. It's small, faint, a memory of another saloon. Another man who didn't like being told no. You survived. He didn't. You move through the narrow hallway. The floorboards creak under your feet, each step a conversation with the building itself. This saloon, this house, this fragile fortress of power and illusion has grown with you. You know every window that sticks in summer and every hinge that groans in winter. The girls' doors are mostly closed. A few are ajar. Behind one, you hear soft snoring. Behind another, whispered voices. You pause at Emily's room. Her door is cracked open just enough to see the outline of her shape curled in bed. She's clutching the edge of the blanket like it might slip away if she lets go. You resist the urge to step inside. Some boundaries matter. You descend the stairs slowly, hand gliding along the railing. The banister is polished from years of hands just like yours, women climbing up to forget or down to endure. The saloon looks different in the morning light. Less alive, more honest. The chairs are pushed against the walls. The tables are ringed with stains and crumbs. A single glass sits on the piano like a ghost from the night before. You walk behind the bar and run your fingers along the surface. Sticky. You nod. Needs vinegar. Thomas appears with a rag, as if summoned by your thought. He begins wiping without comment. You sip the last of your coffee. So, he says, "We expecting trouble today?" "Always," you reply. And then you both laugh, not because it's funny, but because it's true, and sometimes truth is all the armor you get. The business of survival. There are things you do out of necessity, and then there are things you do because you've learned the rules of a world that never wrote them down for women. Running a saloon is not glamorous. Running a brothel above that saloon is even less so. But Catherine, who most people call Madam, knows that survival here is less about what's respectable and more about what's sustainable. The day begins in earnest once the girls wake up. Lucy is the first, as always. She doesn't speak much in the morning, just nods and heads straight to the kitchen, where she sets to boiling water and cutting bread with the precision of someone who's done it since she was 12. Her sleeves are rolled to the elbow, and there's a tiny scar near her wrist that catches the light like a glint of steel. Lucy is the one Catherine trusts most. If Catherine were ever to leave, it's Lucy she'd hand the keys to, not that she plans to. Not yet. By 7, the other girls begin to stir. Doors creak open. Slippers scrape against the floor. The air fills with the soft rustling of fabric, the occasional cough, the muttered complaints of bodies pushed too far the night before. Emily emerges last. She lingers at the edge of the stairs, hand resting on the railing like a child unsure whether she's allowed to come down. Her hair is undone, and her eyes dart around like she's afraid of being watched. Catherine sees it immediately, the way she flinches when a chair scrapes against the floor, the way she holds her arms close, like she's trying to make herself smaller. "You slept?" Catherine asks gently. Emily nods. "Coffee's hot," Lucy says without looking up. "Plenty left." Emily makes her way to the bar, her movements tentative. She grips the cup like it might shatter. Thomas, wiping down the shelves behind the bar, gives her a polite smile. "Cream's a luxury," he says, "but I saved a pinch." Emily doesn't speak, just nods, sips, then coughs. It's too bitter for her, but she drinks anyway. By mid-morning, the saloon begins to shift back into something like structure. The girls divide their tasks. Some clean, some mend their garments, others help in the kitchen. Catherine moves through it all like a quiet conductor, checking for splinters on the banisters, recounting supplies, making mental notes of what will need replacing. "More candles," she mutters to herself. "And new soap. We're down to scraps." She enters the back room and unlocks a small ledger book from a drawer. Every dollar in and out is accounted for. Not because she expects to be audited, but because she needs to know how many nights they can survive if everything suddenly goes wrong. And things do go wrong. Last month, there was a fire 2 streets over. A young boy playing with matches behind a supply store. The flames consumed half a block. 3 girls from a rival house came running barefoot through the night, dresses singed and faces blackened with soot. Catherine gave them water and silence. She never asked their names. The month before that, 2 marshals raided a saloon down in Pueblo, dragging out women by the hair, claiming moral enforcement. Catherine had sent Lucy to bury the liquor crates behind the stables, just in case. Now, everything runs smoother. But smooth, Catherine knows, is often just the calm before collapse. At noon, a messenger arrives. A boy, no more than 9, barefoot and dust-streaked, with a folded note in hand. "For the lady of the house," he says, squinting in the sunlight as Catherine steps out. She takes the note, gives him a penny. The handwriting is elegant. Rosalie, another madam, another survivor. Her house is across town. They don't compete, they coordinate. Unspoken rules govern their dynamic. Never poach, never interfere, and always, always warn. The note is brief. 2 strangers asking too many questions. One fits the description of last week's scarred man. The one who followed your girl. "Be careful tonight." Catherine folds it once, twice, then slides it into her apron. By late afternoon, the air shifts again. Outside, the wind picks up, carrying dust in long, whispering curls through the streets. Inside, the piano tuner arrives, old Pete, whose fingers are permanently stained with grease and varnish. He grumbles as he plays, adjusts, then plays again. The piano is more than decoration. It sets the mood. Its rhythm determines how long men linger, how much they drink, how loose their pockets become. Lucy brings stew to the table. The smell of herbs and meat lifts morale almost instantly. Emily accepts her bowl with a hesitant smile. "You eating?" Catherine asks, watching her carefully. Emily nods. "It smells real." Catherine doesn't smile. "It is." They eat in near silence, the kind born not of awkwardness, but of hunger. Real hunger. The kind that humbles you. After the dishes are cleared, Catherine meets with each girl one by one. Not to reprimand, not to interrogate, just to listen. She needs to know if anyone was mistreated, shorted, threatened. Most nights, it's the same: drunk men, clumsy gropes, exaggerated tips. But tonight, Emily hesitates. "There was a man," she says, voice low. Catherine leans in. "He didn't do anything. Just watched. All night. Sat in the back. Ordered one drink. Didn't touch it." "Did he speak to you?" Emily shakes her head. "Not a word." "Describe him." "Dark coat. Hat low. Clean hands. Not like the miners." Catherine nods. It might be nothing, but it also might not. She makes a mental note. Has Thomas sharpened the knives? As twilight descends, the girls retreat to their rooms to dress. Silk, lace, velvet, all chosen not for comfort but for illusion. Perfume masks the smell of sweat and fear. Powder hides bruises. Lip rouge covers bitten lips. Downstairs, Catherine lights the lamps one by one. By the time the first customer arrives, a banker with too many rings and too little charm, the saloon is transformed. It is warm. It is golden. It is welcoming. And beneath it all, it is ready. A night in the house of smoke and secrets. The door swings open just after sunset. Catherine watches from behind the bar, her hands folded neatly on the polished wood, as the first wave of men enters. Their boots track dust across the worn floorboards, their laughter too loud, their presence too sure of itself. There's always a first one in, some banker or ranch hand who thinks early arrival gives him the pick of the house. And then the rest follow, trickling in like warm molasses. Merchants, miners, railroad workers, even the occasional out-of-towner trying to look like he belongs. Lucy is the first to approach the crowd, offering a practiced smile and a glass of rye. She moves like someone who's been here too long to flinch, yet not so long she's turned to stone. Catherine notes the subtle placement of her body. One step back, always near the exit, never too close to any man's hand. Emily lingers near the piano, pretending to listen to old Pete's careful playing. She wears green tonight, faded silk from someone else's life, stitched and repurposed until it looks like something new. The color brings out her eyes, or it would, if she looked up. Catherine walks the room like a hostess at a dinner party she never agreed to host. She checks the lamplight in every corner, makes sure the cards are stacked and that the whiskey is real, not watered. She smiles when spoken to, but never too warmly. She nods when men call her by name, though half of them think it's her surname. They call her Madam like they think it's a title. They don't know it's armor. The hours pass slowly. The music swells. Laughter rises. Glasses clink. A man spills his drink near the poker table. Another tosses coin at a dancer's feet. A merchant leans too close to Lucy and is gently but firmly corrected by Thomas. who simply appears like a shadow from the wall. There's a rhythm to the place, and Catherine knows every beat. She sees which man is spending too much, which girl is tiring too quickly, which bottle is nearly empty. It's all written across the room in invisible ink, and she's the only one who can read it. She doesn't sit. She doesn't drink. She stays upright behind the bar, moving only when the tempo shifts. And shift it does. At precisely 10 minutes to 9, the stranger enters. He's tall, but not unusually so. His coat is dark and dusty, his boots polished but nicked. He wears a hat too low over his eyes, and gloves despite the warmth of the room. He doesn't look around. He doesn't scan the girls. He walks to a corner table and sits. Alone. He doesn't order. He doesn't smile. He just watches. Catherine feels the change before anyone else. The warmth in the room dims just a little. The laughter shortens, quickens. Lucy glances toward the man and then at Catherine. Emily doesn't notice yet. She's too busy convincing a bookkeeper to buy a second glass of wine. Thomas appears at Catherine's elbow. "That him?" he asks, voice low. She doesn't look directly at the stranger, just nods. "Matches Rosalie's description," she murmurs. "And Emily's. You want me to ask him to leave?" "No." "Want me to shadow him?" "No." Thomas frowns. "Then what?" Catherine places a glass gently on the bar. "Let him sit. Let him wonder if we've noticed." "You think he's law?" "I think he wants us to think he is." The hours continue. The saloon fills with smoke and song and the scent of cinnamon from the pot on the stove. Someone plays dice. Someone else sings too loud. At one point, two men wrestle near the fireplace and are thrown out by Thomas before they can knock over a lamp. But the man in the corner remains. Silent. Still. Emily sees him now. She stiffens. Catherine watches from the staircase, one hand on the rail, and sees the exact moment Emily's face shifts from innocence to wariness. "Lucy," Catherine says softly. Lucy looks up. "Keep Emily on the main floor. Don't let her go upstairs." Lucy nods and moves without hesitation. Catherine descends the stairs slowly. She approaches the piano and leans over Pete's shoulder. "Change the tune," she says. He nods and slips into something soft, nostalgic. A waltz no one can remember the name of. The mood lightens. Just enough. Near midnight, the stranger finally moves. He stands. Several heads turn. He walks to the bar and sets down a coin. "Just whiskey," he says. His voice is plain. American. No accent. Catherine pours the drink herself. She sets it in front of him. He doesn't drink it. He just looks at her. "You're Catherine." She meets his eyes. Depends who's asking. "Just a man looking for someone." "And who would that be?" He smiles. "It's not pleasant. Someone who doesn't belong here." Catherine folds her hands in front of her. "That's half the town. Be more specific." The stranger tilts his head. "You have a girl. Blonde. Fragile looking." "You'll have to be more specific," Catherine says again. He chuckles. "You're sharp. I like that." He picks up the whiskey and walks back to his table. But he still doesn't drink it. The room thins after that. Regulars leave. Minors shuffle home. A man kisses Lucy's hand and stumbles into the street. Only the stranger remains. At 2 a.m, Catherine calls last round. "Let him stay," she tells Thomas when asked. "But why?" "Because we don't make him nervous when he's watching. We make him nervous when we start watching back." Thomas nods, understanding. They leave the stranger in the saloon, still nursing that same untouched glass, while Catherine locks the upper floor behind her and ascends into the silence. In her room, Catherine doesn't undress. She sits by the window, watching the moon slip behind the rooftops. The street is empty. The wind has died. She holds Rosalie's note in her hand and reads it again. Then she places it in the box beneath her bed, beside other notes, some yellowing with age, some stained, some signed only with initials. Warnings, offers, threats. She's kept them all. Sometime near dawn, Emily knocks on her door. Catherine opens it. Emily stands there barefoot, blanket around her shoulders. "He knew me," she whispers. Catherine steps aside, lets her in. "I don't know how," Emily says, "but he did. I could feel it." "You're safe," Catherine tells her. "I don't feel safe." "Then we'll fix that." "How?" Catherine doesn't answer. Not yet. She only nods and waits for the sun. Dead eyes in the lamplight. By morning, the stranger was gone. The saloon bore no sign of his presence. The whiskey glass sat untouched where he'd left it. The chair he occupied had been neatly pushed in, as if out of courtesy. The coin he used to pay for the drink gleamed faintly under a shaft of sunlight cutting through the lace curtains. It was a silver dollar, real, heavy, and warm from having been held too long in a man's palm. Catherine stood beside it, unmoving. Lucy had already swept the floor. Emily hadn't come down yet. Thomas leaned against the doorway, watching her. "He didn't sleep," he said. "No," Catherine replied. "He didn't come to rest." "You think he was waiting for someone to make a move?" "I think he already knew what he came to do. And it wasn't drinking." She picked up the coin, felt its weight. "He'll be back," she said. When Catherine reached Emily's door, it was locked. She knocked once. No answer. Knocked again. "Emily." The pause. Then the quiet shuffle of footsteps. The door creaked open just an inch, revealing a pale eye and half of her face. "I can't stay here," Emily whispered. "Yes," Catherine said calmly, "you can." "He knows who I am." "Maybe." Emily opened the door a little more. "You don't understand. I lied when I came here. I didn't just leave because I was accused of theft. I ran from someone. A man with power. The kind of power you can't escape with a train ticket. I've housed girls who've run from worse. He's not just some banker or landlord." Catherine stepped closer. "Then tell me, who is he?" Emily's voice trembled. "He's a lawman, but not the kind who carries a badge. He works for people who wear suits and never get their hands dirty. He's their shadow." Catherine felt something shift in her chest, a quiet note of confirmation she hadn't wanted to hear. "Then you're not just a frightened girl," Catherine said. "You're leverage." Emily nodded. "And if he finds me, I'm gone. No trial. No questions. I'll just vanish." Later that morning, a carriage arrived. Not a stagecoach. Not a supply wagon. But a sleek, dark carriage with a lacquered finish and brass fittings that gleamed even through the dust. Catherine watched from the second floor as it pulled up across the street. The driver was too neat to be local. Gloves, a high collar, a curled mustache that didn't move even as he snapped the reins. No one got out. No one approached the saloon. The carriage waited. 5 minutes. Then it turned and rolled away. But it wasn't a visit. It was a message. That night, the saloon opened as usual. The lanterns were lit. The piano was tuned. The chairs were arranged in perfect symmetry. But the girls noticed it, the tension in Catherine's jaw, The way Thomas kept his hand near the shotgun behind the bar, the way Lucy spoke in clipped sentences. Catherine pulled Lucy aside just after dusk. "Keep Emily downstairs," she said again. "If she has to go upstairs, she doesn't go alone." Lucy nodded, but her eyes flicked toward the door. "You think he's coming back?" "No," Catherine said. "I know he is." And he did. He returned at the hour the saloon was loudest, when men sang half-drunk ballads and the girls laughed too brightly. He came in as if he were just another traveler. He ordered a drink, sat at the same corner table, and didn't touch it. Emily froze. Catherine approached her. "Go to the back room. Now." Emily obeyed. Catherine crossed the saloon, every step deliberate, calm. When she reached the table, she didn't sit. She simply stood across from him. "You're not here for pleasure," she said. "No. You're not here for business. Not in the traditional sense. Then say what you came to say." The man looked up. His eyes were pale blue, almost colorless in the lamplight. "She's government property," he said, softly. "She's a person," Catherine replied. "Not in the eyes of the people I work for." "Then you're working for the wrong people." The man smiled. "I'm not here to argue philosophy." "Then leave." "I can't do that." Catherine leaned slightly forward. "You don't want to test how far I'm willing to go." "I think I do." The room hadn't gone silent, but it had changed. The energy had shifted. Catherine saw it in the way the girls stood straighter, the way Thomas quietly placed his hand on the bar, the way Lucy drifted toward the piano, keeping her line of sight on the man. "You're interfering with a federal operation," he said. "And you're interfering with a house of women trying to survive," Catherine answered. They stared at each other. Then he stood. The room tensed. But he only nodded. "You've made your choice." He left the whiskey untouched. At dawn, a knock came at the door. Thomas opened it. It was Rosalie. "I got 3 girls missing," she said without preamble, "and 2 men following my supply wagon yesterday." Catherine ushered her inside. They sat by the stove, trading names and timelines. Rosalie had heard whispers about a list, about a sweep, about someone in the territory compiling profiles of every woman who ever left a powerful man in the East. "They're cleaning up," she said, "burning the past." "Emily's past is their kindling," Catherine said. They were quiet for a moment. Then Rosalie added, "We need to prepare." Catherine nodded. "We already have." That night, the saloon was closed. For the first time in 6 years. No lights. No music. Just the smell of oiled guns and candles burning low. Each girl was called in. Each was told the truth. Some wanted to run. Some wanted to fight. Most just wanted to know who would protect them. Catherine promised one thing. No one leaves alone. If you go with someone. If you stay under guard. Emily was quiet through it all. Only later, as Catherine was writing numbers into her ledger, did she speak. "I don't want you to burn for me." Catherine looked up. "I've already burned," she said. "Now I decide what stays in the ashes." And outside, in the quiet of midnight, a figure stood across the street. Watching. Waiting. But this time, he wasn't alone. This time there were 2. And this time, they weren't pretending anymore. Smoke before fire. They came just before dawn. Not through the front doors, but through the back alley, their boots silent on the dirt-packed ground, their shadows long in the lantern glow that flickered behind the windows of the sleeping saloon. 2 men, maybe 3. Catherine couldn't be certain. She only knew because Thomas was already waiting in the dark, a rifle across his lap and an oil lantern dimmed low beside his boots. He'd heard the gravel shift, heard the gate creak open where no one should be. "They're scouting," he whispered as Catherine joined him behind the curtain. She didn't speak. She watched. A silhouette moved past the stables. Another paused by the cistern. A third climbed onto the porch railing, just high enough to peek into the second-floor window, Emily's. Catherine gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles whitened. "I can scare them off," Thomas offered. "No," she said. "Let them see what they came to see. Let them report back. If they're planning something, they'll do it on a schedule. And if we scare them now, they'll change it." Thomas sighed. "You think they'll come tonight?" "I think they'll come because of tonight." By mid-morning, the town had no idea anything had happened. The blacksmith hammered iron down the street. The baker sold loaves with scorched crusts. The preacher nodded grimly as he passed on his morning walk, eyes skimming the saloon like it was just another building. But Catherine could feel it, the silence, the waiting. Inside the saloon, preparations continued. Lucy helped Emily reinforce the lock on her door. The other girls moved furniture, shifted money, packed small bundles of their belongings, just in case. Catherine gathered them in the parlor. No makeup, no corsets, just bare faces and weary resolve. "If something happens," she said, "if they come through those doors with guns or warrants or fists, you don't scream. You don't run. You listen to Lucy. You follow Thomas. And you trust that I have planned for this." "Will they arrest us?" one girl asked. "No," Catherine said. "They won't make it look like that. They'll pretend it's a raid, a violation, an incident. Something no one wants to put on paper. But we're not going to give them that chance." That afternoon, Rosalie sent a runner, a young man with a crooked leg and eyes too old for his age. He limped up the back steps, out of breath, holding a note in his shaking hands. "They're planning something tonight. Stagecoach arriving at dusk. 2 more men inside. Watch for signal. Lantern in upper right window of post office. If it lights, it begins." Catherine read it 3 times. Then she burned it. She turned to Thomas. "Get the wagon ready." "You're pulling out?" "Just a show," she said. "Load it with empty crates. Let them think we're leaving. And if they believe it, then we disappear. And if they don't, then we fight." That evening, the saloon opened as if nothing were wrong. Light spilled through the tall windows. The piano played soft, familiar tunes. The smell of stew simmered in the back, masking the scent of oil and gunpowder. The girls wore their usual finery. Emily wore blue. Catherine wore black. The men came slowly at first. Locals. Regulars. A few traveling salesmen. All unaware. All oblivious. Until he walked in. Not the stranger from before. Not the pale-eyed watcher. This one was different. He wore no hat. His coat was wool, but too clean. He had the posture of someone trained to wait. He didn't smile. Didn't greet anyone. He walked straight to the bar and ordered nothing. Thomas stared at him for a moment. Catherine simply said, "Welcome." The man said nothing. He took a seat at the center table and watched the room. Waiting. 9 o'clock. The saloon hummed with warmth. It was a practiced lie, one Catherine had woven carefully, thread by thread. But outside, the street had gone too quiet. And above the post office, barely visible from the side window, a soft glow flickered to life. A lantern. The signal. "They're coming," Lucy whispered. Catherine nodded. "Positions." Emily was already moving. She crossed the room with slow, deliberate grace, her blue dress swaying like smoke in the lamplight. She walked to the man at the center table and said something Catherine couldn't hear. He answered with a single word. She turned and led him upstairs. 2 girls followed, casually. Thomas moved to the back door. The rest of the girls moved toward the stairs, picking up bottles, locking windows, pulling hidden latches closed behind framed paintings and beneath floorboards. Then the first sound. Boots. 6 pairs. Then the second. The crash of a door being kicked in. But not their door. The wrong door. The old bakery across the alley, used now as a storage room for Rosalie's girls. Someone had tipped them off wrong. Catherine allowed herself a breath. Then came the third sound. Gunfire. It was brief. 2 shots. A scream. Then silence. Catherine looked at Thomas. "Go," she said. He nodded. He moved like a ghost. Upstairs, Emily's door clicked shut. Downstairs, Catherine picked up a bottle, set it gently on the bar. The front doors burst open. 3 men entered, dust on their coats, fury in their eyes, one holding a pistol, another with a deputy's badge pinned crookedly to his chest. "Where is she?" the man in front demanded. Catherine stared at him. "You'll have to be more specific." "We know she's here. I house many women, all of them with the right to say no." The man raised the gun. Thomas stepped from the shadows. Rifle aimed. Silent. Then the pistol was lowered. Silence again. And then retreat. No fight. No arrests. No violence. Not yet. But Catherine knew this was not the end. It was only the pause before the storm. That night, the saloon closed again. The girls slept with weapons under their beds. Catherine didn't sleep at all. She sat in her room, a map spread before her, candles flickering, names and dates scribbled in the margins. She was making decisions. And when dawn came, she would have to choose, run or take a stand. And she knew, whichever she chose, someone would bleed. The cost of silence. Morning doesn't come with joy in this place. It arrives like a notice. A quiet reminder that what didn't happen last night might still happen tonight. You rise before the sun. The town outside is silent, save for the whisper of wind brushing against brittle shutters. There are no horses yet, no clatter of wagons, no hollering drunks being carried home. Only silence. Inside, the saloon feels hollow. The kind of empty that only follows tension. The chairs are still where they were. The cards from last night's last game remain face down, forgotten. Even the piano, usually the first to wake, rests in stillness beneath its dusting of ash. You walk through the rooms as if through a church after a funeral. Thomas is already awake. You find him sitting near the stove, boiling water with that same quiet focus he's always had. The rifle still rests nearby, within reach but not gripped. His eyes meet yours, but no words pass between you. He knows. Last night didn't end anything. It just delayed the inevitable. Upstairs, the girls begin to stir. Emily is among the last to rise. She enters the kitchen with her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders, like it's armor. Her eyes are sunken from sleep she didn't find. She accepts the tin cup of coffee without a word. Across the room, Lucy watches her, not with suspicion, but with the steady gaze of someone measuring how much strength is left in someone else's bones. You sit at the corner table, the one beneath the window that still shows a view of the post office. There is no lantern this morning, but you still watch it just in case. Rosalie arrives around midday. She comes in through the back, where the shadows linger longer. Her bonnet is dusted with grit, her coat pulled tight even though the weather is mild. She doesn't sit. She speaks before the door finishes closing. They hit a house in Laramie last night. Took 4 girls. Your heart tightens, but your face stays still. They came with papers this time, she adds. Said it was legal. Said they had names. They're moving fast. You nod. Emily. Rosalie asks, voice lower now. She's still here, you reply. For how long? You don't answer. Because you don't know. You meet Emily on the back porch later that afternoon. She's watching the horizon like she thinks she'll see them coming from miles away. But that's not how they work. When they come, it's always quiet. Precise. Planned. The knock on the door. The paper in hand. The smile that never reaches the eyes. She turns to you before you speak. I don't want anyone else hurt because of me. Her voice is thin, like paper in wind. You staying here doesn't hurt anyone, you say. She shakes her head. Well, they're watching this place. You don't argue. You don't lie. Instead, you ask, do you want to run? She exhales slowly. No, I want to choose. You nod. Because in this life, choice is the only currency that matters. Not money, not land, just the right to say yes or no. That evening, the saloon stays closed. It's the 2nd time this week, the 3rd time in 6 years. The town is beginning to notice. Someone knocks around 8. A curious customer. Maybe a drunk. Maybe something else. Thomas doesn't open the door. The girls eat together in silence. Lucy tends to the fire. One of the younger girls, Sarah, tries to hum a tune she can't finish. Emily sits apart, near the front window, where the light from outside fades slower than it does in here. You write in your ledger as if it's just another day. As if you're not preparing to lose everything. Later that night, long after the last lamp is snuffed out, a shadow passes beneath your window. It doesn't stop, but it moves like it knows the shape of this place. Like it's walked these streets before. Like it plans to again. You don't follow. You don't raise the rifle. You just wait. Because now, everything is about the waiting. The quiet. And the cost of keeping someone safe in a world where silence can be mistaken for guilt, and kindness mistaken for defiance. A plan written in dust. You wake to the sound of sweeping. Not harsh. Not frantic. Just steady. Rhythmic. The soft drag of a broom across warped wooden floors. Lucy, as always, is first to move. Her rituals keep the house breathing. Even when things outside aren't right, she keeps the saloon's lungs clear of dust. She doesn't sweep because the floor is dirty. She sweeps because the act itself is proof that something continues. That the world didn't stop turning during the night. You sit at the edge of your bed, bare feet on the cold floor, and listen. Outside, the world feels suspended, like the sky itself is waiting for someone to speak first. The town hasn't stirred. No wagons. No boots. No merchants setting up crates of dry goods. Only the wind sighing along the narrow gap between the saloon and the bakery across the alley. It reminds you of the first winter after the war, when even the birds were silent. You hated that quiet then. You hate it now. The girls gather late. You let them sleep longer than usual. Not because they need rest, but because they need time. Time to sit with what they all feel but haven't said aloud. Sarah has stopped humming. Claire keeps glancing at the windows. Even Lucy is more careful than usual, lifting chairs instead of dragging them, wrapping bottles with cloth before moving them to the back shelf. Emily comes down last. She doesn't say good morning. She just sits at the table, places her hands flat against the surface like she's bracing for something. You pour the coffee yourself. She nods but doesn't drink. Across the table, Thomas eats quietly. He hasn't shaved. The stubble along his jaw is grayer than you remember. You realize you've known him 10 years. That's longer than most men in your life stayed alive. You clear your throat. Everyone looks up. You all know what's happening, you say. No one argues. No one pretends. You continue. If they come again, it won't be with threats. It'll be with orders. Paper. Men in uniforms. And they'll say it's for the law. Sarah frowns. What law? You don't answer. Because even the people with badges don't know what law they follow anymore. By noon, you've made a decision. Not because it feels right, but because not choosing would be worse. You step into the back room, where the ledger and the lockbox are kept. The keys sit in your palm heavier than usual. You open the drawer that you swore you'd never open again. Inside, a folded map, 3 letters never sent, and a note written years ago in a different version of your own handwriting. You unfold the map and spread it across the desk. The trail out of town isn't new. You've memorized it a dozen times. But now, you need to look at it again, like maybe it will offer something you missed. There are 2 ways out. The river trail, fast but too exposed. The canyon pass, narrow, hard, and slow, but forgotten by most. You run your fingers along the canyon line. Dust lifts from the old folds like a breath. That night, after the lamps are dimmed, you call Emily into your room. You show her the map. This leads to Carson Rock, you say. There's a man there. Older. Carries no gun. He owes me. Emily studies the page. Her hands shake, but her eyes don't. If I go, she says, what happens to the rest of you? You don't lie. They might stop watching. And if they don't? You smile, but only slightly. Then they'll be too late. She runs a finger over the line drawn toward the canyon. Do I go alone? No. At dawn, Lucy prepares a small pack. No more than what can be carried without suspicion. Dried biscuits, flint, water, a small folding knife, and a hand-stitched handkerchief from someone long gone. Thomas takes a horse from the stable and loads it slowly. Not like a getaway, more like a delivery. Emily waits by the door. She wears the old gray coat, the one that used to belong to one of the girls who made it out. Her hair is braided. Her hands are steady. You kiss her forehead once, without a word. Then Thomas mounts and reaches down to lift her up. She doesn't hesitate, and in less than a breath, they're gone. You don't cry. You sweep the front steps instead. And when the sheriff walks by at midday and says, "Quiet day," you nod. You say, "Hope it stays that way." But you don't mean it, because something is coming. And it doesn't care how clean your porch is. Only how empty your house will be when it arrives. The morning after Emily leaves is the kind of morning that doesn't feel like a beginning. It doesn't even feel like a continuation. It feels like a gap, an interruption in a story you were trying to finish but forgot how. Like a missing paragraph in a diary that you've read 100 times and still don't understand. There is no sound of footsteps on the upstairs floorboards. No creak of Emily's door opening slowly. No tentative descent of slippered feet on the stairs. No cough from someone who's not yet used to the dry air here. Only silence. And in a place like this, silence has weight. You feel it when you pour the first cup of coffee. You feel it in the way Lucy folds napkins slower than usual. You feel it in the way the girls speak to each other in half sentences, glances replacing full thoughts. No one mentions Emily's name. No one has to. Her absence hangs above the table like unburned smoke. There's a cup left untouched on the far side of the kitchen. Lucy pours it anyway, sets it down where Emily used to sit, and when it goes cold, she picks it up without a word and empties it into the basin. Then she pours another, not because anyone will drink it, but because ritual matters. You step outside around mid-morning. The sky is too clear, too open. The street is dusted with yesterday's wind. A tumbleweed rests against the post near the well, its dry limbs barely shifting. Even the birds seem to avoid flying over the saloon today. You watch a boy across the street sweep a boardwalk that doesn't need sweeping. People do that, you've found. When something feels wrong, they clean. It gives the hand something to do when the heart is waiting for bad news. Inside, the saloon feels stale. Not dirty, just still. Like a room after a funeral, or a church between sermons. You light the lamps anyway. The glass chimneys flicker with oil flame, golden and unsure. You check the bottles, wipe the glasses, turn over the cards still left on the tables from 2 nights ago. They show nothing unusual, just a jack, a 3, a queen, and a bent 8 of spades. Thomas is in the back room, fixing the latch on the emergency trapdoor you had built years ago but never used. He doesn't say anything when you enter. You sit on a crate and just watch the way his hands work, calm, unhurried, but deliberate. After a moment, he says, "Horse didn't tire. Girl rode well." You nod. "That canyon trail," he adds, not looking up. "Steep as hell, but quiet. Any trouble?" He finally looks at you. "None yet." But yet hangs between you like smoke from a fire still smoldering. Later, the saloon opens. You unlock the door at 3:15, like always. That's how you trick a town into thinking nothing has changed, by moving the same way you always have. A few men wander in before dusk. Familiar faces. The man from the grain warehouse who never finishes his drink. The dentist who only drinks on Wednesdays, no matter what the calendar says. They sit where they always sit, ask for what they always ask, but their eyes linger too long on the walls. And when they speak, their voices are lower. They've heard something, not facts, just murmurs. Whispers carried on tobacco breath and passed from table to table like poker chips. One of the girls gone. Thomas missing all day. You watching the window more than the room. The saloon is still warm, still lit, still open, but it doesn't feel safe anymore. It feels like the last calm moment before thunder. And then, at sunset, it happens. The piano stops. Old Pete rises from his stool without a word, walks to the doorway, stands in the golden light. You follow a few steps behind and see what he's looking at. A black carriage at the top of the ridge. Same one. Same wheels. Same gleam of brass under a setting sun. Same driver with that hat pulled low and those gloves too clean for this town. It's not a threat, not openly. But it's not a visit either. It's a reminder. A symbol that whatever you sent away last night, someone still wants it back. The carriage doesn't stop. It slows, hovers in front of the saloon just long enough to be noticed, then keeps going. Silent. You and Pete watch until it disappears behind the tree-line. He turns and returns to the piano without saying anything. The tune he plays afterward is slower than usual, and lower. That night, you can't sleep. You try to read, then write, then sweep. Eventually, you return to the ledger in your office. You stare at the column where Emily's name used to be. Not because you expect to write it again, but because removing it would feel like forgetting, and forgetting would feel like surrender. So you leave it there, blank beside her name. Just space. A space she left behind. The men who knock too late. There are 3 knocks on the saloon door just before midnight. Not the kind of knock that asks permission. The kind that waits to be answered, or doesn't. The kind that doesn't need to be loud to be heard. You feel it in your spine before you hear it with your ears. The kind of knock that carries a cold with it, one that lingers even after the door stays closed. Lucy is still behind the bar. She's wiping glasses that are already clean, her eyes drifting toward you. You give her the smallest nod. That's enough. She walks to the back without a word, just as you've practiced 100 times before. The girls upstairs go quiet. The piano fades to silence. And then the knock comes again. Slower. This time with the back of the knuckle, not the fist. But deliberate. You reach for the key beneath the bar. Not to open the door. Just to remind yourself it's still there. Your other hand brushes past the small derringer hidden near the till. When you finally open the door, it's not who you expected. 3 men. Not drunk. Not rowdy. Just watching. One has a black hat too clean for the dust on his boots. Another wears a wool coat that's too warm for this season. And the third, the youngest, carries nothing but a small notebook in his left hand, closed. They don't ask to come in. They know better. They just nod. Madame Catherine, the middle one says, voice like sand through cracked leather. We heard about your girl. You say nothing. They already know what they came to find out. They're not here for truth. They're here for leverage. The man with the notebook opens it, doesn't read from it, just flips it slowly, like reminding you of how long it is. We were hoping to ask her a few questions. Before she left. You lean against the frame. She's gone. Gone where? Far enough. The silence that follows is not hostile. It's worse. It's calm. They weren't counting on her still being here, but now they have to adjust. That's what men like this do. They adjust. You notice the youngest of them watching the walls. His eyes drift to the staircase, to the ledger on the bar, to the back hallway where Lucy disappeared. He's making a map in his head. The one in the black hat finally speaks. You know, some folks might say you're protecting someone. You give him a look, slow and even. I protect everyone who lives under this roof. That's never been a secret. He nods, and that's what bothers you most. Not that he challenges you, but that he respects it. That he understands the rules here. That he plays by them until he doesn't. They don't stay long. They never do. Their questions are smoke, curling without shape, scenting the room without leaving ash. They don't threaten. They don't promise. They just observe. And when they leave, they don't go down the street. They split. One to the right. One left. One disappears behind the alley. They've mapped this town already. They'll wait. Later that night, long after the lamps are lowered and the saloon is empty again, you sit by the fire. Your boots still on. Your coat still draped over your shoulders. A cup of coffee untouched. There's a letter in your pocket, one you haven't opened yet. It's from Rosalie. You recognize the folded weight of her handwriting without even reading it. You're not ready for whatever's inside. Not tonight. Instead, you watch the flames twist along the edge of the log. You listen to the wind wrap around the saloon like a man circling a sleeping dog, slow, cautious, ready to bite if it wakes. The girls upstairs are quiet now. But you know they didn't sleep. Neither did you. At dawn, you walk out to the front steps. The sun hasn't cleared the ridge, but the light is already pale and empty. Across the street, someone has drawn a symbol on the window of the old post office. Chalk white, circular, imperfect. You don't need to ask what it means. Messages like that don't need words. You turn back inside. You still have time, but not much. The ledger and the dust. There's a kind of silence that only comes at the end of a storm. Not the kind that follows rain or thunder, but the kind that follows something human. A confrontation, a death, a decision made too late or just in time. That's the silence in your saloon now. But no one mentions the men. No one speaks about the chalk symbol. And no one asks if Emily is safe. Because in this place, you survive by leaving things unsaid. You sit alone at the bar long after the girls have gone to bed. Your ledger is open. The ink is drying slowly beside you, each number forming a story only you can read. You trace the week's entries, not with your pen, but your mind. There's the shipment that never arrived. There's the customer who never came back. There's the bottle count that's somehow short even though you've started locking the back cabinet. And there's the blank space where Emily's name used to be, crossed out with a single line, not enough to erase her, only enough to close the column. Outside, dust begins to gather against the door again. You'll sweep it away tomorrow. Maybe. Or maybe you'll let it stay. Let it settle over the steps like a quiet warning to anyone who comes looking for what doesn't belong to them. The kind of dust that tells a man, be careful what you knock for. Lucy appears just before dawn. No words, just a nod. She pours you coffee, then pours herself a cup too. This is how you both say, we're still here. The girls stir slowly upstairs. One by one. Quiet footsteps. A soft cough. The scrape of chair legs. Business must continue, because out here, it always must. Later you step outside. The sun has risen, pale and tired as if it too didn't sleep. Across the street, the chalk symbol is gone. Someone scrubbed it away in the night. Maybe the wind. Maybe someone who knew what it meant. But you still see it, burned in your memory. A perfect circle. Incomplete. You think, not for the first time, about leaving. Selling the saloon. Packing only what fits in one trunk. Following the tracks somewhere east or west, it doesn't matter. Someplace with grass. And silence. And no need to wear boots made for stone floors and slippery lies. But then you remember, people like you don't leave. You stay. You watch. You keep the ledger. Because if you don't, no one will. You take one last look at the street. The town is waking up. The baker unlocks her shop. The blacksmith coughs twice and opens the forge. The marshal walks past, tips his hat, doesn't stop. And the world turns like it always does, with or without justice. Back inside, the piano starts again. Not a dance tune. Not a lullaby. Something in between. The kind of melody that sits in your chest, low and steady. Like breath. You let it play. And you listen. Because this is your saloon. And this is your story. And in a world that rarely gives women the last word, tonight you keep it